Down to go up.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Barbara Arachu, and my co-host is Melissa Begley. And we are on Poetry Initiative for Raising Awareness for the Sexual Trafficking of Children. It's a very sad topic, and yet we need to do something about it. So as poets, we are here to speak our feelings and our positions, and we will start with my lovely and beautiful co-host, Melissa Begley.
Good morning from the USA. My name is Melissa Begley, and thank you for being here for the Poetry Initiative that I co-founded. And Barbara instantly became my partner, and she does a great job as the host. And as we know, this is a very, very difficult topic to discuss. It's not very pleasant. And I have written a poem about different things that I have heard about sexual trafficking of children. And it is not a very nice poem. But you know what? The dark side of reality is not very nice. And so let me recite. I've got to put my beautiful eyes on. The title of my poem is The Power of Disgust. He was an education major at the university for the reason of sexual attraction of children. Many 5 to 7 years of age girls disappeared during his attendance at the university. Their remains were never found. After graduation, he secured a job in a luxurious house in his hometown, a small community where everyone knew each other. His sexual urges were not being met. He would visit the animal shelter or search online to find puppies and young female dogs. He kept them in a cage and would engage in sex with them while watching pornography showcasing children. He attended a family reunion and was fixated on his 6 years of age niece, adorned with golden curls and sapphire-colored eyes. As time went on, his lust grew, and he kidnapped his niece. She was soon reported missing, and there was not any evidence regarding her whereabouts. After the rape, he killed her. She was cut up and boiled as food for his dogs. His mother was grieving and unexpectedly visited her son. She knocked on the door and he did not answer. She had the extra key to his house and opened the door. She screamed because he was engaging in sex with a helpless dog. She contacted the authorities. Her son was arrested for bestiality and possession of child pornography. Evidence was procured proving he tortured and murdered his niece. An intense investigation revealed that the children that were missing during his college days were sold into sexual trafficking for considerable amounts of financial gain. His integrity and morality could not bear the thought of placing his niece in the sexual trafficking industry. The underworld, filled with powerful people, to include politicians and judges, arranged for his death while in jail awaiting trial. And I think the reason I mentioned about his integrity and morality could not bear the thought of placing his niece in sexual trafficking, because I think there is a strange thought process that some people have regarding morality, and it's just not normal. And that concludes my poem, and thank you. Cannot hear you, Barbara. Barbara.
Thank you very much. And I muted everyone else. I'm going to unmute you now. Please unmute yourself because I muted you both.
Well, I wish you wouldn't do that.
Why would I do that?
Perfectly capable of muting.
Well,
yourself.
Melissa was speaking and I didn't want to interrupt her.
Whatever.
Okay, I did not mean to do that. It's just something that I felt I needed to do because as the host, I didn't want anyone to have any extra, sound. So it was not, something that was punitive. It was just something that we needed to do. So please, while someone else is speaking, please mute yourself. That'd be better.
Barbara, I just want to say right here, it's too hard for me to do that.
To do that, to mute and unmute yourself?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, I understand. And so we'll hope that there's no noise where you are.
I don't expect any. And if there is, then I will make that effort to make sure that it does not interfere with it.
Okay, sure. Whatever.
And Melissa, that was wonderful.
Melissa,
So
you're
really very heart touching and very.
It was
is
very,
what happens.
it was very difficult to wrap my mind around this topic. Very difficult. But it's
Yeah.
something that has to be heard.
Yeah.
Jenny, do you want to say something?
Well, I think it's what you said, Melissa, is very true. It's what we hear all the time nowadays. It's becoming much more open. It's becoming open in the courts. It's becoming open in the society. People are talking about it among neighborhoods. Yes, it's horrible, absolutely horrible to think such things go on in our society, but it has and it does. We need to work on it. We need to talk about it.
Yes. And so we're going to go to Mary Lynn. Are you ready?
Yes, let me pull my poem up. This is what I mean about it's being hard for me because I gotta put up. Anyway, I am Mary Lynn Louise. I am a poet from the United States and from Florida. And like Melissa, this was extremely hard for me to write around this subject. It just tears your heart up. But anyway, my poem is entitled, I'm Not a Statistic. My story happened when I was 5 years old. I always did what I was told. I loved my mother. I adored my dad. I had a good life. I was happy and glad. Then the circus came to town. Dad got tickets for us to go and look around. I got so excited when I saw a clown. Next thing I know, my parents were not around. The clown had taken me to see his place and to show me how he painted his face. Then things began to happen at a very rapid pace. He was kissing my face, then he bound my hands and feet with tape. No way for me to escape. Thank God the police had been watching him. If not, this story would not have a good end. Seems this clown was a pedophile and a child sex trafficker. Over 10 million children are trafficked each year. Something needs to be done. The evidence for change is very clear. And that's my poem.
Very good, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I love that, Mary Lynn. So poignant and true. And it's a cautionary tale for sure, because we tend to let down our guard and we don't know what's going to happen to our children if you let down your guard.
They can disappear so fast.
Absolutely, in seconds.
I've heard, I mean, there were those stories. Well, we could get into it later. Penny, do you have something to say?
what about Mary's? I thought Mary's was wonderful because children are attracted towards fun fairs and predators do hang around them. That's a black round cookie jar waiting for kids to be distracted from their parents and separated, and only takes a second and they're gone, which is awful, really. So I listened to your poetry very well, Mary, because I thought that was happens all the time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Melissa?
I have to agree with Penny. You know, when you're at a place that's enjoyment for children and there's many children there, there is going to be pedophiles and people that traffic in the sexual industry of children. And there's no place that's safe anymore, unfortunately. And it's a different world than what I grew up in. And I have to say that I have never liked clowns. I did, so I know that I wouldn't take off with a clown. It might be somebody else from the circus, but it would have never been a clown because they've always terrified me. But Mary Lynn, your poem was excellent. And yes, children are easily just taken, snatched away at a place of enjoyment, and parents just have to take their eyes off of their child for 1 second, and
Right.
and it's horrifying, it's terrifying, and yeah, it's time for change. But it's a billions and billions of dollar industry, so it's going to be difficult to change, but we have to attempt it.
Yeah, I agree. And so we come to me. I also found this extremely difficult. I waited until last night to write my poem. Melissa and I shared, as we usually do, and equally horrified, I think, at what we've written. I came to it in a different way, but here's mine. Mine is called Musings of a Captured Child. She didn't know what day it was. Night and day didn't exist anymore. Only the endless pleasing of her masters and the few crumbs of freedom she found when she was allowed to go back to her bed. How long she had been there, she didn't know. Her mind had long since given up trying to count. And she endured the probings and pawings of desperate men whose tongues and fingers were nonstop on her body. She longed to be back in her own bed at home where she could take up her old life, though she felt no one would want her now. She was damaged goods and fit only for a life of debauchery and pain. Her body carried old and new bruises from the countless encounters she had. Each time she curled her insides up, presenting the serene face of a 13-year-old whose virginity had been stripped of her. She was lost in a sea of chaos, floundering in the wild waves of defeat, each day no better than the next, praying soon someone would save her as she clung hopelessly to the thread of hope.
Oh, very good.
Very good. Yes,
Very good.
Absolutely.
Barbara. Yeah, you really got into the heart of that. You really got into the child, which is really very, yeah, very good.
I took it from the child's point of view. Yeah.
Very tricky.
Anyone else
That was
want to say something?
It was very touching, and it's just overwhelming to think what these children are going through, and I just don't know what we can do, but we have to do something. And it's just really emotionally overwhelming. Your poem and Mary Lynn's poem and everybody's poem is just emotionally overwhelming. And you did a wonderful job on your poem, Barbara,
Yes.
taking the child's point of view. Yeah.
And so much happens to a child, mentally, when they're going through this kind of thing, and even if they do get rescued, they still are subject to a whole lot more because it takes, we had Are you wanting us to discuss now or what? 'Cause
Yeah,
if
you
are,
can
I have
discuss.
some-
Yeah, no, you can discuss. Yeah.
Okay, well, you know, this is very heart touching to me because my passions are children and the aged, you know, and I've written several things about it. But, Sunday at our church, we had some missionaries who dealt with foster care. And they were talking about how they had rescued some children from being trafficked and abused sexually. And even after they get into a foster home, they think they've been rescued, and maybe things will go fine for a little while. And then I'll be doggone if even in foster care, they don't get the same treatment.
That's right.
So there are people out there who just become foster parents so they can do this, Our society
Yeah,
really
thought.
needs to get more and more and more aware of things like this. And then they have the mental cycle, the psychological thing. And then even they said several have committed suicide, even after they've been rescued, because after the second time, they saw no hope at all. So, it's a sad, sad thing.
No, it is, and it goes through generations, unfortunately. When there's generations where it's sexual trafficking goes on because it becomes like a norm in some form, which is great shame. I mean, really, because those kids are never going to be normal, and are they as adults either? They're going to be, have
I know.
deviated.
Yeah.
Well,
I know of a person, I will not say her name, whose father used to get drunk and allow his friends to, be with her.
Yeah.
And she now has bipolar disease and has been damaged beyond repair. But she's still fighting. She's fighting. And I have to say, she's probably one of the better ones because I can't imagine anybody having that happen to them and having to go through such a painful process of dealing with adults in that fashion. Just so awful.
Yeah, we do have individuals like Tim Tebow, who is, Mary Lynn knows who he is because he attended the University of Florida, and he is also an NFL football player and a professional baseball player as well. But he's a multi-millionaire, and one of the missions that he is on is rescuing children and young females from sexual trafficking. And it takes powerful people to fight powerful people, because the average citizen cannot do that. And like you stated in your poem, Barbara, when somebody is stripped of their humanity, that is taken away from them, their self-worth has been destroyed. And if they are rescued, there are people that can overcome it, but it's always going to be in the back of their mind. And I have listened to some videos of women that were sent into the sexual trafficking industry. And so often it was their parents that sold them, and in some of these other countries. And there are countries that have the sexual trafficking industry where they prostitute children as young as 2 years of age. So it's not just young teenage girls in their puberty stage. It can be children as young as 2 and 3 years of age that are sold to men that can have sex with them. I just don't know how a horrible person can do something like that. And it has to be men with financial resources to be able to afford to travel to these countries and to be afford to spend that type of money. But it is definitely evil-like. The industry is evil-like. The men that do this are evil-like. And it's a darkness. And we've got to bring back God, a higher power, and fight against these type of situations. And it's just horrible. I cried having to write my poem. And I'm sure you all did too, because just the thoughts of it, even though I know it exists, when you present it in the forefront of your brain, it's just powerful. It's overwhelming. And yeah, awareness is definitely needed, because too many people I know in the United States, and I do not know about other countries, but if your little world around you is fantastic, you do not open your eyes to the bigger picture of what's going on.
And you know,
agree.
as I started investigating this, I mean, I knew a little bit about it, but boy, I didn't know nearly what I know now. Here in the United States, well, no, not in the United States, globally, there are 80 million people being trafficked every year. And
80 million?
25%, 80 million. And there are 25% of that are children. And you know what? We think mostly, we kind of tend to think that it is girls. But you know what? It's boys too, little boys.
It is.
Yep, it
Oh,
is.
yeah, little boys too. Yes, horrible. And we're not adding in all of the adult women who have been pushed into this field to make money because they've been told that this is the only way that they can get money.
Yes.
And it's very sad that, we're not even dealing with prostitution. We're dealing with children, and children who are prostituted, really. They're pushed into situations where they have no control over their lives. And when you have no control over your life, you're pretty much done, I think.
And you know, it gets back to the old saying too, hurt people hurt people. You know, like Peggy said, it's generational after generation, because it just keeps going on. That hurt keeps going on, keeps going on. But another thing too, when I was investigating this thing that just blew my mind, was the politicians and the people you would not believe who are supporting this stuff. I won't mention names, but if you care enough, you go look and see it. They will be names that right up front.
Yeah, that's why I put that in my
strange to you at all. You will know who they are.
Yeah, that's why that was my last line in my poem, is because the industry is protected by politicians, wealthy men, judges,
and women.
And well, women too. I mean, women are wealthy as well. And as we know, women are not perfect, and they also have deviant behaviors. It's just not males. And
you know, now that pornography used to be basically viewed by men, but now women are beginning to come right up to the same level as men.
Yeah.
No, it is very difficult. And also, I think as a society, we have to be able to listen to children, especially where places where children are, like schools, like nurseries, like churches. We need to listen to what they're saying and not brush them off. Because very often the child have mentioned it, have reported it, but they've been told, oh, don't talk about such silly things. That's wrong. That couldn't have happened to you. No, that's a good person. That's your granddad, or that's your uncle, or that's your auntie. And the kids have accept that, but we have to be more accepting to query what's being told, investigate the storylines, and take it further. And it needs training. We all need to be trained, and the children need to be trained about who to go to when they get these messages and what the messages might be. I think we have a lot of educational work to do in this area, and it's been very neglected. Very neglected.
I have to say, that is, if you don't think of it as being money, power can also cause sexual trafficking of children. And I worked in a school where, unfortunately, there was a teacher who was using his children. He was using the boys, and he would keep them after school and do things with them, and they never told their parents until one kid actually did. And then it was investigated. And the sad thing is the vice principal's office was one door away from this teacher's classroom. And he would do this while he was in his classroom after school. And
Well,
it's this kind of thing, this kind of power is something that that will cause it. But also, I think what we're dealing with here now, what we're trying to speak to today, is money. Children who are pushed into the field because people want to make money off of them in some way. And the sadness of this is money is power, and powerful people are doing it, as Melissa and Mary Lynn said. And so what can we do to stop this? I mean, as poets, what can we do? We can write our poems, we can talk about it, but what else can people do to stop this awful situation?
Well, I think Penny was correct in observation of children and listening to children, but also children, as you stated, Barbara, a lot of times they're silent, they do not speak up. So you have to really tap into their personality changes. If you have a 6-year-old little boy or a 6-year-old girl that's always been jovial and always been, happy and everything, and then all of a sudden they become very quiet and reserved, you really have to watch their behaviors as well. And yes, the difference between sexual trafficking of children and women, young boys, even probably young males, and drugs is that you get paid over and over and over and over again for somebody to engage in sexual activities with a child or a young adult. And with drugs, you sell it, it's a one-time financial gain, but with a human being, it is a continuous source of income. It's just not a one-time ordeal. And so that makes it even more lucrative for people who engage in these types of activities. And it's really very sad. It's just horrifying.
I know that I just read something about the FBI. I was just like delving into this, and I saw something about the FBI and doing something about trying to do, to work on this. And I think that would be a way to, to help. But some things that I'm reading are reduce the demand for commercial sex. That would be wonderful. Identify and address if a child has been attacked during healthcare visits, and what Mary Lynn said, foster safe homes and neighborhoods, make sure that people are not doing this in their home, and end business profits from trafficking related transactions. Of course, encourage healthy behavior in relationships. And there's national human trafficking hotlines recognizing the signs and of this.
Well, there's a lot of banks and financial institutions overseas outside of the United States that you can deposit large sums of money and it's not tracked by the FBI or anybody of officials of other countries. And, they need to change that as well, because I know a lot of people that are very wealthy, they keep their money offshore outside of the United States, so they do not have to pay taxes on them. And that's a different topic. But, it's going to be very difficult to fight this industry, but anything can be fought. And if it's at least lessened and, not as powerful as it once was, then success has been, virtuous, been victorious.
If I may say something, one of the things we've noticed here in the UK, there is a country who only sent, say, 8,000 people a year to our country for refuge and safety. And now they're 800,000. And they reckon it's because they're being pushed over for illegal purposes, for sex, for drug mules, for that sort of thing. And they've all come from one country, and it's a huge problem suddenly highlighted because of the figures of people coming into the country. So that's another area. The big guys push these people out to earn the money for them.
Well,
And they come in huge numbers, huge numbers.
I just noticed, I was just reading the national, what's it called? It was called the National Human Trafficking Hotline. They have a number you can call if you think someone is engaging in that, and they recommend that you look at the signs. But the worst thing I read is that undocumented people are being pushed into this, and they can be young, they can be very young, and they have no idea what's going on. And I think that if everybody just stops and looks around and is more observant, that maybe that could help too. I mean, we don't know. We're living, like Melissa said, in our little lives. We don't really know what's going on next door even. It could be happening anywhere.
I think that's the most important part. Everybody needs to be aware of what's going on around them.
Absolutely.
You're responsible for your neighbors, your immediate, you're where God placed you. And what you need to do is be aware of the people around you. Look for anything strange, or a child that's wandering that doesn't seem to know where they're going. And also we need to be more aware of who we are voting for, who we put in power, what they stand for, what they do. Vote your conscience. There was some good things that came out of COVID. In our church, we are a mission-minded church. And I'm not going to say where it was, but it was a country a long way away from us. It has a lot of prostitution of these kind of people, where they're kept in cages, their bodies are used and all this. And because the houses that have the madams and stuff, they had to let their people go because nobody was coming and they couldn't afford to take care of them. So thank God we were able to take some of these out and put them in a village outside and support them financially, teach them how to do things, take their children out there. And believe it or not, some of the men that had been coming to them actually guarded the village so that other people couldn't come in. So that it's not that they want to be doing what they're doing, they're trapped. And they need the help wherever we can get it, whether it's through our churches, whether it's through voting, praying, whatever we can do, we need to do.
How old were these people?
I'm talking about people, well, they started when they were young teenagers, and then they became adults, and they have children that are actually, they're prostituted, and they have children who actually are underneath the beds while the prostitution is going on. Yeah, we have missionaries that go in and actually get them out and give them a way of surviving without having to do this. But this was one of the things that was really, we consider a blessing of COVID, because we would have never been able to help if it hadn't been for COVID.
Yeah.
So, you have to grab the opportunities where you see them. Don't wait, get in there and do something. anything, do it.
But I
That's
think we're all,
horrifying, actually. Horrifying to hear that, Mary Lynn. Horrifying to know that was going on in the United States today.
No, I didn't say in the United States. I said it was in a
Oh.
country far away.
Oh, in
Now,
a
we're
country.
mission, but if we
Oh,
saw it here,
these were migrants, people who are being
no, these are
abused in their
people living
country.
in another country
Yeah.
that were forced to be into prostitution.
Oh, okay.
You know, but they
didn't
were
have-
children when they first became prostituted, and then they were always into it, and they have children from the prostitution, and it's just a generational thing that just keeps going on. I just wanted to say that we were blessed as a church to be able, because of COVID, to actually go in there and help, you know. And what I'm saying is, look for your opportunity to help, whether it's your neighbors, whether it's, you know, however, wherever you see it, even as an individual, if you see
Oh,
some
I
way
see.
you can help.
I see. You put them in a village outside of where they had lived.
Yes,
In the
yes.
same
And
country.
then the men, some of the men that used to go and visit these prostitutes actually formed a protection around these women and their children to protect them from people who would try to do it again, you know.
Oh, that's
It's
good.
amazing. It's amazing.
That's good.
but, well, I do think it's arrogant to think that this doesn't happen in the United States of America, because child prostitution does happen. Sexual trafficking does happen. We cannot look upon other countries and think, oh, that happens over there, but it happens in this country as well. And another thing that happens in this country quite frequently, I mean, there's a lot of great places where you can go get a massage, a lot of legitimate
yeah.
places, but I tell you what, there's a lot of massage parlors that are fronts for prostitutes. And most of these prostitutes are from foreign countries, and they are kept. They have no independence whatsoever. Anything that they need is provided to them, whether it's clothing, well, probably very small amount of clothing, and foods and everything else. But it's a worldwide epidemic. And, you know, probably some countries are worse than others, but it impacts every single person in the world.
Globally, it's global.
It is global.
Yes, it's a horrible, horrible
It's right.
statistic that we have 80 million people, children and adults, who are
That's
being
what-
trafficked.
That's what we know of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
iceberg, I think. Tip of the iceberg. Yeah, I also think that I wrote something about within the family where abuse is going on, which then leads the child to lose their identity. And when they leave home, they leave to get away from the abuse, but they run into more abuse on the streets because they've got no one to run to, no one to protect them when they go. And I wrote this, what was called, Don't Leave Me Alone with Grandpa. Don't leave me alone with Grandpa. Don't leave me alone. The minute you leave, I want to run and hide. I hate being alone with Grandpa as he changes, not the kind man we all know. Don't leave me alone with Grandpa. Don't leave me alone. He promises me all the things I love. I only if I do as I'm told. I am not to tell anyone. It's a secret, just between us. Don't leave me alone with Grandpa. Don't leave me alone. He touches me in places I do not like. It hurts. I shout, no, no, and cry. He says it's a way to show he loves me so. Don't leave me alone with Grandpa. Don't leave me alone. Why can't you see the damage I'm suffering? Why can't you keep him away and you stay? Please help the little girl I was and love me in the right way.
Amen. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
Family, beautiful, Penny.
Thank you. But it's the place that a lot of children suffer and suffer and suffer. And, you know, and it's horrendous because home is your safe place, supposedly. We all,
Exactly.
parents are our safe people. grandpas are our lovely people, but they aren't to a lot of children. They're not.
No,
Yeah.
can't.
And I think,
No.
and I think sexual molestation and violation of children are usually from, relatives, a close
Yeah.
family member. It's not from an outside stranger. The outside stranger might be the one that's going to, I've got to go. Somebody's at my door.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Somebody's at the door. Melissa's got somebody at the door. Mary.
But I will say that we are talking about children who are somehow taken and put into this life. And it can happen in an instant. I mean, children can be kidnapped anywhere. And so I'll just tell you a story of my situation with my child. We thought that my daughter was lost. We were in a Target and she was maybe 2.5, 3, just old enough to toddle around by herself. And we looked everywhere and we couldn't find her. And she was one of those children that stuck to me really close all the time. And so the store, when we told them, closed, locked all the doors and put on the loudspeaker that nobody was allowed out because the child was missing until we found her. She had wandered off to look at something. We had no idea where she was. And we found her quietly looking at this car seat, actually. She was looking at a car seat. But the store was responsible. They felt responsible because so many situations had happened in Target where children were taken to the bathroom or whatever, and then moved without parents knowing where they were. And so they did that for us. But I have to say, losing your child is probably the worst ever situation in public ever. And I had been hearing at that time stories about children who had been with their parents and suddenly parents had lost them and they never found them.
But I could say another poem which I wrote, it's a short poem, about this very subject, snatched. This happened in my adopted son's street, in the street outside. And I'll read what I put. I put, snatched. On my way to school, singing a song, it was such a beautiful day. When a car pulled up, I was snatched and taken away. I struggled, I could not breathe. Something was pressing over my nose and mouth. Terrified, I floated away, desperate for my mum and dad. When next I awoke, nothing was the same. I was in an unfamiliar type of a house. Voices echoed in corridors with languages, some not my own. Oh, Mum, where are you? Do you know where I've gone? 2 men appeared. I cowed away as fear clawed at my throat. It's all right. You're safe now. We're the police. We have the men who took you. A policewoman has gone for your mum, who raised the alarm when she saw them take you away. She timed to take a picture with her phone of the back of the car and its number plate. This day could have turned out bad, the worst you could have had, yet it is so wonderfully good. Stay alert, stay safe. And that was what happened. I've added a bit on the bottom, but it happened. A child managed to get away, he screamed, and the neighbours all came out because the neighbours knew the children in their street. And that, I think, is an important lesson. We ought to know the children and the people in our street. So when they're in trouble, they can shout out and hope to get some help. And I think that's something was good. But that happened to them. And he was a 10-year-old. They were so lucky. And my son, he had a camera, but the camera didn't stretch far enough along the street to get the photograph of the car. But I added that on with the phone. So if parents know they could take a photograph quickly, even in a terrible situation, it's one way of capturing a car, the back end anyway.
Absolutely.
But it's not going to be the answer, but it might help somebody. That's why.
Here in America, there have been stories of children who, when there was one boy, Eton Pates. Do you remember that story, Mary Lynn? Of the
Yes.
little boy? Yeah, they found him eventually. Just to, like, maybe I think like 10 years ago, maybe earlier, he actually reappeared. But the mother lost her child between her home and the bus stop. He never got on the bus and he was kidnapped. And she was devastated. She got on TV and talked about it, and they never found him. And we all thought he was lost until they reappeared as an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, really scary, and talked about what had happened to him.
You know, when I was in
Yeah.
Egypt, well, the lifestyle in Egypt is a lot different than it is here in the United States. It's kind of like it was here maybe in the 60s and the 50s when, you know, everybody took care of everybody's children. So you knew all of the children and you were allowed to discipline them. You know, nobody thought anything about it. Well, when I was in Egypt, the streets you lived on, everybody in that whole area knew who each other was, whose children were what and ever. And then one day, one of the children came up missing. And I mean, boy, everybody got really thing. But you know what? They put it out over the, what do you call them? The mosque things that send the things out, the prayer things every day. They put it out over there and it went from mosque to mosque. And finally, we found that child about a mile and a half away. Him and his sister were there, and they had got so tired that they went to sleep in the bushes. So thank God, you know, but those are different ways, you know, that you can use the community. The community just needs to be aware too, you know. But we're, you know, we're more talking here today about the trafficking part of it and the money and stuff involved, not just the molestation and disappearance of children, but really you have to be totally aware. That I think that is the biggest thing. You have to be aware, you know, of things going on around you, and just be very diligent about, like Peggy said and others said about, and Melissa said about, you know, just watching the children's attitude and emotions and listening to them. And if there's any difference, any change in their personalities, like suddenly, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong. I had a child, and I'm not going to tell you which one it was, but I had a child that walked home from school and went through a district he shouldn't have done because he missed the bus. And he didn't want to bother me because I was working. Well, I know to this day that something very terrible happened to him on the way home. And I think it was this. But I couldn't get him to tell me because he didn't tell me anything at all until he was grown out of the house, married, and had a child of his own. Then he told me about it. And, you know, he is paranoid about his child getting away from him at all. He doesn't let him walk anywhere, go anywhere that he doesn't take him, you know. And I mean, he's 17 years old now, the child, and he's still very, very protective of that child. So, you know, it just, it can happen to anybody, any family, anywhere, anytime.
Sorry to hear that, Mary Lynn. Very sorry. Very sorry.
It happens.
Because it impacts you for the rest of your life.
It does.
You might move on and become a productive member of society, but as you stated, he's very overprotective of his son and paranoid, and it's just, you know, it's just feelings that do not go away, even though you have overcome enough to, you know, be able to work and have a family, but
Many times I know someone, I know a man, full grown man who was abused as a child, and his parents never believed him. And he wound up having to go to therapy at a very pretty early age, but it was, they still didn't believe him when he went into therapy. And now as an adult, he suffered a great deal of mental anguish and illness. And he's, I'm not going to say his name, but he is very open about his abuse. However, being abused as a child can cause bipolar disorder, mental illness, paranoia, all these things which can be very detrimental to a person in their lifetime. And if you imagine 80 million, let's just say that maybe 10 million of those are children, because there's a lot of prostitution in the world. So say 10 million, think of those children and what they have to go through, and every single day.
Several times a day.
Every single day. And in my poem, what I tried to show was what it did to them, you know, how they could actually curl their insides up so that they wouldn't have to think about what was going on. So they could divorce themselves from the reality of what was going on. And that also can create a great deal of mental illness when you're separating yourself like that from reality. Just awful. So I think that we have gone through a lot of what we should say about this. Does anybody else have anything more to say?
well, I just want to say that I have had close friends and people that I have known that have encountered, you know, sexual abuse as young children, and maybe even abuse from their spouses or their siblings. And one lady that I was talking to recently, it's almost, you know, it started with her uncle and all of his children, and now their children are all engaging in activity of sexual abuse with the children. But she and so many of the people that I know have overcome this without having to, you know, go into bipolarism or mental health issues. And somehow or the other, they've had the inner strength. I don't know if it's because of their faith in God, because a lot of times people blame God for these things, even though it is not God's fault. So I do think that you can overcome and, you know, not enable yourself. And it's just, you know, it's very difficult, but I am fortunate that I have been inspired by people that have encountered so much darkness in their life, but now they shine the light upon other people. And I'm just going to say it was a politician at my door because it's midterm election. So I cannot wait until November the 9th when it's over.
And me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there are a lot of issues that we should keep in mind. One of them is your politician thinking about people? I mean, so many of them think only of themselves. So you want to watch out for that. Are they thinking about people, not their own pockets? And too many politicians are thinking about their own pockets and not people.
That's why the majority of them go in and come out as millionaires or become millionaires while they're up in the office. And that's on both sides of the alley.
Yeah, it is.
You cannot blame one party over the other. It's
no, but we won't get into politics because that's too damaging here. But I will say that our talking about this subject, bringing it out into the light, is a good way to stop it, because the more people talk about a subject, the less interested people become in engaging in this subject, because it's no longer something that is not out in the open. Because once it's out in the open and people are saying, oh yeah, I know this is happening, I'm gonna stop it, there's more chances of it not happening. So yes, we should be vigilant. Yes, we should be watching our children. Yes, we should be looking for signs if anybody has attacked them or bothered them in any way. And yeah, children do close up when these things happen. And if you're not aware, you can just ignore it completely. I think parents don't realize that they're ignoring them, but some parents are too busy with their own lives to really look at their children. And I don't know, this subject, when I started writing, I thought, oh God, how can I write about this subject? And now that I'm listening to all this, what people have said, it frightens me even more that this could be going on while I'm, living my life. And I just want to say, I wish we had more people on this. But the poems today, Penny, your poems really touched my heart.
Thank
The
you
one
very
about
much.
Grandpa and the other one about the boy who was kidnapped. Oh,
Yeah.
my heart
Snatched.
rending.
It's such a terrible subject. It's such a terrible subject, and we do need to talk about it. We talk about. We're beginning to open up as a society. We're beginning to talk about. We're talking about tampons. We're talking about menstruation. We're talking about fertility. We're talking about sex. It's beginning to be more open, but they have to educate the children early. We do have to educate the children early, and get the right information without scaring them half to death. But they do need to have tools to protect themselves too, and know when something's wrong is going on and when to go and talk to somebody. And
Right, good touches and bad touches, right. Children have to know good touches and bad touches and know what to do if somebody touches you badly. I mean, that's the thing. When a child is so young, they don't know, they have no protection, they have no defense. So if you teach them young that if somebody touches you badly, what to do, run. That's what I would tell a child. Somebody touches you badly, run away.
But it's very confusing, as Penny wrote about the grandfather, when he is telling the child that these are good touches, I love you, this is my way of expressing love to you. It's very confusing to the child to process that in their little minds. And, we have to be very careful of what we tell our children and make sure that it's age appropriate. And, but it might be easy to know that a stranger can't touch you like that. But as Penny was discussing in her poem, when it's grandfather or somebody close to you and you're being told it's okay, I mean, it's just,
It's horrible.
it's horrible.
It's horrible. But a child should be told,
No,
I think, well, I try to teach my children that nobody should touch you there, no matter who, just nobody, just mommy when she washes you or,
Yeah.
you see, sometimes it's mummy. I mean, this is horrible to see.
Sure.
Like, it's
Absolutely.
yes. Oh, yes. And it could
Yep.
be mommy with boys. I mean,
I know.
mommy with boys can, and unfortunately, my friend had that experience. Not only was he sexually abused, but his mother used to do those things with him. So
There was a woman I knew who it was her mother that was abusing her, and she used to abuse her and lock her in the cupboard whenever it's school holiday time, and then
oh, Penny, you're frozen.
just turned out to be a one. Oh, sorry, I'm gone.
No, you can't help that. You can't help being frozen.
No, she's now a wonderful person, and she's helping damaged children. She got training, and she's helping damaged children, and she's wonderful at it. Fantastic.
That's good. That's good. So as poets, what can we do?
Right.
Yeah,
Write about it. Write more.
absolutely.
You think we should write more about this and post it and publish it? And
As hard as it is, it took me forever to write the one poem.
I think
Writing one
when
not too long ago, but like I was telling Melissa last night, I couldn't find it. Where a mother and and the father thought they were doing their children, their two little girls, a good thing by letting them go to the city, but to get a job so they'd have a better life. And it turned out, no, they were going to be sex trafficked. So, yeah, we need to write more things in a loving type way to bring awareness to others, because I'll bet you that most of us learned a whole lot more when we were investigating things in order to write these. At least I did.
Well, I have found anytime that I have posted a poem that has been controversial or on a subject that's very negative, it's rare that anybody likes it, loves it, or comments on it.
That's what I was going to say, Melissa. I saw that too. And I feel the same. And I think, why are you not reading this? And why aren't you not? This is
Absolutely.
But you write something frothy and fairy-like and
yeah, they love it.
Likes.
right, and that's why if you want anyone to read anything like that, you could post it on your own page and have your friends read it, or
It's even on my own page that happens, not just in the poetry forums.
yeah,
Mine goes on.
maybe we all need to take our poems and put them somewhere for everyone to see. Maybe we should publish ourselves.
And I also, no matter what people think about the news media, and you have to really listen to the news media to be aware of what's going on in the world. And I also recommend, especially if you're in the USA, that you listen to both point of the views. You don't just listen to the liberal news media, you listen to the conservative news media as well, the moderate news media, because as intelligent beings, we have to be able to incorporate all thoughts and process in our minds, that it's almost a form of brainwashing if you only listen to one point of view.
And I've just signed up today to go and give some talks at the library, because I did many years ago, and I had the first talk I ever gave on my writing was to a library here locally, and 16 people came, and I had a very good rapport with all of that, which was lovely. So I decided now I'm well enough to get out again. So I shot down this morning with my friend in a car, and I said, let's go to the library. I'm going to sign on. I'm going to do some talks. So I've signed on, and I'm waiting for them to give me a date. So,
fantastic.
So there,
Penny. Is this to read your book or to just read?
No, I just read them. I just read them for people. I mean, I've got hundreds of them. I have to say this. I mean, you must have as well, but I've got hundreds of them. And
well, you should be publishing them if they're.
Well, I am starting. I've got some audio files coming out. We're just doing the final contract at the moment. And I've got 4 of those coming, 1 for children and 3 for adults. That's audio. And then I've got some audio ebooks to go with them, because then the people can read the book and hear the voice and put the two together, which will be educational, I hope. But if not, it doesn't matter. But at least they get a chance of both.
Oh, that's great. And your voice. Are you doing the voice too?
I've done all the voices. Yes.
You have a pleasant voice.
Such a nice voice. I really enjoy your voice.
It's
that accent, right? It's that accent. It makes everything sound a little bit more.
It's funny because I never ever thought about my voice ever before, but till I started doing this, and then people say your voice, you just set it all off, and I thought, well, no, you do. It's just a voice. It's just a voice, and the words, the writing is I just write, but I love hearing people's stories back when they hear a story. They give you feedback, and that's why this children's thing about sex abuse of children and adults and all age group and animals has to be spoken about, because that allows them to tell us their stories.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that when we get out and we talk with people, that it's so much easier than just being alone. As poets, we live a very solitary life. And because nobody really, in my family, I'm the only one who writes poetry. So nobody wants to share it with me, and I don't share with them. So I share with you guys, and I share with my, my groups occasionally. But even I was at my book club, and a friend of mine, well, he's now my poetry friend, he came and he read some of his poems at the book club. And so now next week, next time I go, our next book club, I'm going to read my poems. So I'm going to try and bring poetry into the book club.
The more you bring poetry into your life, I mean, I read when somebody's been kind to me, because I have carers at the moment helping me. Somebody's kind to me, I say, "Have you got a minute?" And they say, "Yes." All right. Sit down. I'm going to try to read you a poem. This is what I wrote today, or this is what I wrote yesterday. And they sit there, and they just go off somewhere out of the horribleness that they've been in. And they say, it's so refreshing. I go out smiling or thoughtful, and it takes me away from the horrible things I've been dealing with at home or with other carers, other patients who are very, very poorly. And that's what it's about. That's the power of we have in our pens, I think. It's giving that back to somebody, to give them the moment of respite.
Right. I was at a friend's birthday party. She invited me to a birthday party. And so as a present, she didn't want any presents. So as a present, I wrote her a poem. And she wrote me an email saying that she was overwhelmed by my poem. She was overjoyed by my poem. And the thought that I had made her happy from my words made me so happy. And she kept rewriting to me how wonderful it was and how great it was. And it was, for me, to write a birthday poem is like the best, because that's the most fun. You're writing to somebody and you're writing a poem, and it's from your heart to them. So it's really, like, I think the greatest gift you can give anybody is writing a poem for them. And so she thought so too. And it was so exciting to me. I was like, wow.
And the greatest gift that you can give to somebody is your time.
Right.
Yes, right.
And I have to tell you, Penny, I think it's very impressive that you give that type of time in a poem to somebody that you do not even know. And
I do it at the bus stop, on the bus, on the train. I mean,
that's so impressive.
Wow, that is really, you mean to strangers?
Impressive.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
I must just tell you this, then I must go, because I've got a guest here and I'm running out of time. But I was giving stories on a train, quite a long distance train, and we were chatting away, and I had 8 women sitting around me listening, and we had such fun. We were laughing our heads off, and it was just great. I was hearing all their stories. It was wonderful. And then we pulled it to the station, and then we were pulling out of the station, and one of the women went, "Oh, that's my station. I should have got off there. My husband's waiting for me. My husband's waiting for me." And it was in the days before having a phone, mobile phones. It was, you had to ring in the phone box, and she'd phoned, and the phone box at the station when we left to say she was on that train. And here she was going on to the next station. And he was waiting.
Oh no.
I often wonder what he said to her when she finally caught up with him.
Oh no.
So that was
Wonderful, wonderful.
It was just a funny story, but it was so funny. We often laughed. We've laughed many times about it. It's been worth its weight in gold. The story being told, stories on that train. They had a great outcome for everybody, and people will all remember them. They do. But I don't consider myself a writer. I consider myself a storyteller. So I'm a storyteller.
That's what I consider you too, as a storyteller. Absolutely. And I can't wait for your books to come out, and your audio books.
I can't either. They're coming.
Very
They're coming.
exciting. It's
I'm
really
waiting. I've
exciting.
been waiting. I'm waiting. Yes.
Yeah, we're ready.
Yeah.
And I must go because I've got a guest, and I've been overdone
Okay.
with time.
And I've
Thank
got
you
one
very
coming.
much, ladies.
So
Thank you ever so much. I love being part of this group, and very difficult subject it is, but we have the strength to tackle it. We have the heart to tackle it, and we
Amen.
have
That's
the
what we have, the
will to
heart.
do it.
Yes, and I think
Yeah.
we can end soon because Mary Lynn has to leave at 12. So let's just have our ending remarks, Melissa.
Well, I think this has been a wonderful discussion, and the poems were all fantastic. And I think it has been emotionally overwhelming for all of us, but it fuels us to be more aware and to maybe get involved locally and in our communities, or maybe even if you have the means to donate financially to organizations that you know that are honest and that they are doing something to end, the sexual trafficking of children. And I just can't imagine that this is so prevalent anymore. And we've got to stop it from growing and growing, because like I said, the world has changed since I was a child and even a teenager, and even when I was in my 20s and even my 30s, and we won't go on after that. But I always thought my mom was I had wonderful parents. My mom and dad were fantastic. And my mother used to always tell me, do not talk to strangers. It's just like, why would I want to talk to a stranger? I've got all my friends. And then she would tell me, if a man ever kidnaps you and puts you in his car, take the steering wheel and cause an accident, and you will be saving lives of other children. And I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, mom. but but because my mom was a very gentle person. She was kind of a non-Catholic Sister Teresa. She was such a very wonderful human being. But you have to tell your children that might not be the best way, but it did put into my mind that there are people out there that are not trustworthy.
Well, my mother always used to say, I grew up in New York City, so when I was pretty young, my parents let me go with a group of girls to the city. I was 12, 13. I think I was 12. And there was a group of 4 or 5 girls, and we all stayed together, and we all got on the subway together, and we all knew where we were going, and we stayed together. And my mother said, when you go to the city, you walk down the middle of the street, you don't look left, you don't look right. you just move ahead. You look straight ahead. You don't look anywhere else. And you make sure that nobody talks to you, and so when I was a child, that's what I did. I did not look left. I did not look right. And of course, hold on to your bag like it's gonna, you never let go of your handbag, never. So that kind of thing was instilled in me as a child, and so I instilled that in my children, that they don't look left. If you go anywhere you don't know, don't look left, don't look right, just go straight ahead, walk, and don't talk to anyone, and make sure that you get where you need to go. And of course, if you're in a supermarket, that kind of thing, I talk to people all the time. I mean, my kids are always telling me, Mom, you talk too much. You talk to everyone. And strangely, men talk to me. I really don't know why. They always talk to me. So they always say, Mom, men are always talking to you. I said, I don't ask them to. They just do. So anyway.
Yeah, if I get a case of water at the store, there's always a man. It doesn't matter whether he's 18 or if he's 80 years of age, that
They
is
always want to help.
picking it up and putting it in my cart, even when I tell them no. And then I have other friends say, really? I would fall and have to lay on the ground and yell help before any man has ever come to my rescue. So I'm like you, Barbara. I don't flirt with the men, but I always attract them. Even when my husband was alive and would go out grocery shopping together, men would come up and one man said, "Oh, you're so lucky. How did a man like you get a wife like that?" And he says, "I'm going to kidnap her." And my husband would just grow proud. I mean, he wasn't the jealous type, but that's off the subject, so I'll quit.
No, but I think not talking to men is a good idea in any situation if you're
Oh, no,
your
I
child.
think so. I think, yeah, with children, but with adult women, I think it's very
Oh,
pleasant.
women can talk to men. I mean,
Yeah. But children really should not talk to men or women. They should only engage in conversations with their own friends, and they should not ever invite an outsider into their
never go into any stranger's car, and never speak to any stranger. If a stranger talks to you, just say no.
or just keep, like you said, just keep walking forward, not
Keep
look.
walking
or right.
forward. Don't look left, don't look right. That's it, because if you don't look left, you don't look right, you do look straight ahead, you're not engaging with anyone.
Because I think we all know that sometimes females are the ones that are used to procure young girls into the sexual trafficking.
Yes, and with
So-
what was it, the Weissman, was that the Weiss? Yeah.
Well, yeah, that allegedly, I mean, a lot of things are still haven't totally come out under that
But
situation.
she was definitely procuring for him.
Yeah. And so I think that we should not let our children talk to anybody
No.
ever.
No.
So
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to have to go.
We have to go too. Mary Lynn, do you want to say one more thing before we go?
Well, the only thing that I would add from what all of you have said, that I hope all of our discussion here today, for the people that are listening to this, that they too will go and investigate what we did to become more aware of how big and globally horrific this is. Just become more aware.
Absolutely, Mary. Absolutely. Mary.
And Penny, thank you so much for coming.
So
And enjoy your guest. And it's afternoon there, right? It's like 4.
Yes, it is. It's sort of 5.
Well,
in the-
I think we also have to be aware that a lot of these industries are tied in together, whether it's pornography, sexual trafficking, the trafficking of drugs.
Yes.
A lot of times they're under the same umbrella. And, that's why you really have to be very careful if you're, what you're doing, what you're watching. And, since pornography is on on internet now, it has created a lot more people who are addicted to porn.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely, and with children too, but that's a whole other subject.
It is, but my point was they're all tied in together.
Right, they are.
Pornography, the
But
sexual
trafficking is happening, and we should be aware of it. And we should be telling our politicians to examine this and to find ways to do more.
Write it down. Write it.
Yep. So with that,
To all of you, I've got to go.
we've got to go too. So thank you
Bye.
so much. Thank you so much for everybody.
My
And
pretty nails.
we have no idea what our next topic will be, but I hope it's going to be a little bit.
I think the next topic should be about betrayal.
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 Betrayal, because you can be betrayed by a friend, you can be betrayed by your spouse, you can be betrayed in the workplace when you share maybe a project with a colleague and they take it and run on it on their own. And it's not quite as dark.
No, it's not.
But it does happen.
Okay, we could do it on betrayal. Yeah. Okay.
I'm going.
Bye
Love
bye,
y'all.
everybody. Bye bye. Okay,
This is
I'm
from
going to end
Kentucky.
this. I'm ending the recording.
Okay.
So now, kisses from Connecticut.
This is from Kentucky.
Kisses from Florida.
Bye bye. Mary Lynn, you're looking great. I just want to say.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Mary
you're
Lynn
looking-
has the most
really
beautiful
looking better.
complexion. The most beautiful complexion.
You're making me blush.
Well, a
Well,
blush for me too, but
Well, it's really kind of unusual because you've lived in Florida, and a lot of times the people who live in the sun states, Florida, Arizona, Texas, that their skin ages more rapidly, but your skin is flawless. You're just absolutely
she has
stunning.
beautiful skin. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
End it now.
Okay,
Wonderful seeing all of you, and I think betrayal is a good idea. Yeah, yep. We'll
Not as
talk
dark.
soon. I just want to say thank you for all that you've been doing, Mary Lynn.
Oh,
Mary
you're
Lynn
very welcome. You're very
and
welcome.
Melissa. Melissa, I can't thank you enough for doing what you're doing for the forum, and
Well,
I
I've not
can't
been
always
as,
be here. Yeah, I can't
I
always
have,
be here.
I have not really been as active since I lost my niece in August, and, yeah. So, you know,
I know you had tragedy, but I can't always be here. The dog, you can see the puppy, he's grown. And
gorgeous.
he's a total handful. And so with my daughters and all, I ended the recording, I thought.
No, it's still going.
Oh dear.
Anyway, enjoy.